People love a good routine, and oftentimes they get comfortable, and over time they're left behind. And that's because things change. That's why I always make an effort to find a way to improve the process. I'm not just talking about title insurance, I'm not talking just about real estate professionals, but everyone. So whether you own your own business, you're trying to advance your career, or perhaps you just need things to go a little bit more smoothly on the home front, this is for you. My goal in this workshop is to open your eyes and give you an opportunity to identify something that you can make more efficient. But first things first, you can't just make changes all the time. You need to be aware of what needs to be changed. You need to be listening and watching for changes. But if you change it all the time, it's going to create a mess. So where do you begin? Personally, I feel like you identify a failure. So in our world, we pride ourselves on customer service. And that means a customer complaint, it is our failure. So what could I have done to prevent that? Could I have changed something in our workflow? Could I have trained an employee a little bit more efficiently? What can I do to minimize the risk of us creating an upset client? And I think that's where you have to look internally and figure out your workflow and your business model, right? It's not gonna one size fits all, but listen to your staff, listen to your customers, and see what you can pinpoint to make a change. So for me, I love automation. So if I get a customer complaint that our office is failing to communicate a specific detail on a transaction, perhaps I can create an email template, something that gets done every time on every transaction to make it foolproof, so no longer will we disappoint our clients. And for me, that means efficiencies. The biggest failure is communication. And whether that's a manager communicating with their employees and communicating with management, or customers, right? Whether it's a buyer, seller, real estate professional, it all stems from the same thing. So be sure to ask or be asked what you can do to make changes for your efficiency. I think for me, I often do the job. So when someone is out of the office, perhaps I fill in. And as I'm doing the task and I'm doing it how I know it's supposed to be done, I continuously think, is this the best way? Is this the best use of my time? Is the most efficient way possible? Is it the least amount of clicks? And I communicate that back to that employee and I say, let's give this a try. Let's tweak it a bit and see what we can do to improve the process. So there's no magic answer about creating efficiencies. It's not a mathematical equation. You can't just say every quarter, look at your process and make sure it's efficient, or twice a year and you'll be golden. It's an ongoing thing. I would challenge you not only to look as you operate daily, but to challenge your staff as well. So, my famous words for my staff is just to do it how I want them to do it, because I feel like it's the most efficient way possible. And I don't want to hear their feedback on the process until they've mastered it the way it is. After that, if they think it could be more efficient, I welcome their feedback and we can strategize on how to create more efficiencies. So it's ongoing. It's every day, it's every action, it's every transaction, and that's really the key. So not to repeat myself, but what questions would you ask yourself when trying to identify an efficiency? And mine is always the same. What's gonna prevent the next problem? It is easier to be proactive, it's easier to be in front of an issue. It is easier to over-communicate than to deal with all the ramifications of not doing those things. So I would rather get in front of a problem and say, hey, seller, just so you know, this is what's happening, versus having that last-minute phone call with a real estate agent, letting them know a closing's not gonna happen in an hour because of these items we haven't cleared. If you get in front of it and you're proactive, you eliminate the issue or the complaint. It's the same thing with doing things accurately. It is so much harder to go back and fix mistakes and problems than just to do it right the first time. So again, efficiencies might not be doing it the fastest way possible. Perhaps it's just the most accurate way possible. Maybe I slow down and take a little bit longer on this step, because to redo this later, it's gonna create a lot more time and a lot more waste for me. As a leader, the way I like to lead my team through changes or implementations of efficiencies is slowly. You can't change the whole wheelhouse. You can't have everybody shift the way they're doing their work all at the same time. And I think that's because, for one, we're all people and it's overwhelming. You've memorized certain steps, or you believe you're an expert doing something the way you've been doing it, and now you're going to try to change it, right? That prevents a challenge or a hurdle. If you have an entire team doing that, then it just creates stress and confusion. And I think often, they'll end up just maybe complaining to each other that they don't think it's the right way, or that, it's a waste of their time. So I think one thing at a time is easy to adapt or adopt and put into play. And then also to evaluate it. Until you try it, you don't know that it's the most efficient thing. So by doing one step at a time, you can say, okay, that worked. Let's try tweaking this next step. So I recently took over an operation. The manager got promoted into a different line, different work. So I took over, and it was just, very inefficient. It was a high volume department, and there just wasn't consistency from where I could sit. But when I took over, again, I just dived in. I didn't create issues for the team. I just tried to understand their workflow and meet them from where they were at. And with that knowledge, I started to make changes. I think one of the things we often pride ourselves on is getting the job done. We can do it all. We don't need any help or assistance. But the truth of the matter is, when you're talking about high volume, the work has to move on. It can't get stuck at one person's desk because they want to do start to finish. The more people you have in the process, the quicker and more efficiently it will move through that. And I think, what I asked them to do was to trust me. I made some changes and asked them just to hold on and try it for 30 days. After that, I welcomed their feedback. We were able to identify some other things that needed to be tweaked. But overall, I would say that the whole team can recognize the improvement in the process and our efficiency. Oftentimes, the problem, I believe, is a lack of workflow or a lack of instruction. So some managers like to micromanage, and some like to have a laid-back approach. I find that I want somewhere in the middle. I want people to take my direction. I'm okay with deviation if they communicate it with me, and then we talk it through. But overall, employees need structure. If you lead your team to a place where you just want them to get their job done and you leave it to them to decide how they're going to do it, you're going to create a dozen different workflows, a lot of inefficiencies, and just frustration. Whose job is it? Who is going to be held accountable? At the end of the day, you need someone to own the responsibility. And I think it's very hard to undo those types of mentalities. If you give your employees freedom to create whatever kind of workflow they want, it's a lot harder to rein it in and implement that workflow. So I think that's kind of where I've seen it fail, is people want the job just to get done, and however you want to do it is fine. I think you have to inspect what you expect. As a follow-up to the implementations of our changes, we did have one-on-one meetings with every employee. We asked them for positive, negative, whatever insight they may have, and then suggestions on how we can continue to improve the process. Overall, it was very positive. And that just opened the door for me to say, okay, now that we've improved it this far, we're really gonna start honing in on even more efficiencies and accuracy. And again, that just levels us all up to be a different standard. So we all know that technology provides a huge impact in our day-to-day, right? We don't exist without technology. And I think sometimes we have to look back and say, are we old school? Are we new school? Is there someone in the middle? So technology in title insurance has changed a ton since I've been in the business. Believe it or not, I've been with Fidelity for about 20 years and have seen it all. I remember when we didn't have email and we faxed everything, and documents were printed out on these carbon copies. So in my role, I have considered myself old school. It doesn't necessarily have to do with your age, just the way you think. So I think sometimes what we have to do is create an in-between. When we hire new people, they don't want to work as hard. They want to do as little as possible, or they don't understand why we do it the way we do. And then you've got old school people who don't want to change. They don't want to do anything different because they feel like they're an expert. And that's often involves technology. So I feel like I am in the middle, and I resist change a little bit, but have embraced technology because time over time, it has led to efficiencies. And what I've done is I take one thing back to someone who's old school, and I ask them to give it a shot. You know, we take 10 seconds to write one sentence in an email. But if you take, I don't know, 30 seconds or a minute to create a template for that email that you're sending over and over again, it creates so many efficiencies later and allows you to add more professionalism and more customer service language in that email. Instead of saying something short like, here's the document you requested, you could say, good morning. Here's the document we spoke about. Let me know if there's anything else I can do for you. It's a pleasure working with you. All of that is now created in an efficiency. It's just an email template. And I think that's key in some of our technology. Every day our processes improve. You know, we launch new applications, systems are updated, obviously security is tightened. You know, so I don't think everybody always sees it in a positive light, but the more we can embrace technology and understand it, the better off we'll be. But again, challenge yourself to evaluate it. You don't know that the person who created it or who is implementing it actually has done your job. So you should test it for yourself before rolling it out to your team. I mean, for reference, you know, I started my career with Fidelity as a courier. That was back when we had to drive documents to the courthouse to get them recorded. So every day I'd gather them up. I'd take about an hour car ride to the courthouse and then an hour ride back with the other documents that had been recorded. Now it's just clicks of a button. So instead of waiting a month, 2 months for a deed to become of record, we're talking about 3 hours, maybe 3 days. But all that time, that 2 hours I spent driving there and back, are now saved and can be focused elsewhere. So overall, I just love efficiencies. I know it sounds weird and not everybody can relate, but I feel like by focusing on it my entire career, it has led me to grow and to become a leader. It's not necessarily something that was just given to me. I feel like I earned it by finding a way to make my processes better. And so again, doing the job day in, day out, challenging yourself each moment, is there a better way as you plug through the day? It will help you, because the truth is, none of us want to work any longer. As life changes and you struggle for that work-life balance, you can't just cut out work. The work still needs to be done, but you could do it more efficiently so that you can still leave on time. Thank you so much for tuning into this second masterclass. We'd love for you to follow us on Instagram at @thereframe_FNT or on Facebook at @thereframeFNT for additional content from myself or my counterparts Susan West and Jesse Pittman. Remember, work smarter, not harder.